Not all cards are against humanity. Today on Hit the Table, we're talking about card games. Human beings have been playing card games for thousands of years. In fact, they're one of the very first examples of tabletop gaming in our history. One need only look at the success of cities like Las Vegas to see how casinos have built entire industries around poker and blackjack. Next to physical sports, I can't think of any other gaming style that's more common among the general populace. Card games offer suspense and strategy in a compact package that makes it easy for anyone to pick up and play. This is why they have remained so popular throughout the years. It used to be that you could just use a deck of 52 cards and play any number of games with your friends and family. But in the modern gaming era, it's about more than aces, jacks, and kings. It's about more than a full house or a royal flush. In the last 20 years, game designers have developed new mechanics to help freshen up the card gaming scene, making it one of the most popular and successful parts of the tabletop industry. There are so many variations of rules floating around board game culture that you could spend your entire life dedicated to card games, never roll a dice, and never lay out a board. Our goal is to introduce you to the myriad of card game experiences that are helping to challenge the traditional notion of this age-old art form. It'll also help bolster your library and give you new games to play with your friends. But before we dig too deep into some excellent beginner card games and the mechanics that help them run, we want to warn you of three things. First off, we'd like to note that this list is made up entirely of strategic card games, and not a lot of the party game fare like Cards Against Humanity, Apples to Apples, or The Resistance. That's not because those games are illegitimate, it's just because that's an entirely different style of play that we think we can dedicate to another list. Secondly, because of the strategic nature of the games we're going to be discussing, many of them will sit on a more moderate tier of tabletop gaming, and we would suggest maybe you'd start with our Beginner's Guide to Board Games before you dig into this list, because ultimately, many of these games are going to be hard to understand if you're a first-time player. Lastly, I have a bit of a confession to make. I'm not a huge card gamer myself. I prefer more tactile products like board games and miniatures games. But that doesn't mean that I haven't had a lot of fun playing board games in the past with my friends, and in fact many of them prefer a card game experience to something more intense. Hit the Table is about more than my personal taste. It's about getting you ready to join the board gaming culture that I love so much, and card games are a huge part of that. And so we want to make sure that you're given all the proper information so you can decide which part of this huge culture is best for you. With that being said, there are so many genres of card games now, it can be hard to decipher which will be best for you and your group. What we're going to do is inform you about the mechanics first, and then give you a title that helps to make that mechanic famous. From there, you'll be able to make an informed decision. Perhaps the most famous style of modern card gaming is the CCG, or collectible card game, that started to become famous in the mid-90s with a game called Magic: The Gathering. If you haven't heard of Magic, you've probably been asleep for the last 20 years, because it's the single most popular trading card game there is, and it's one that continues to thrive despite its age. What makes a CCG unique amongst its peers is its distribution method. Players collect randomized boosters from their local gaming store, and they open them up, and each one has different cards inside. They then use those cards to construct a deck that can be used in friendly games among friends or in hardcore tournament settings. Every single deck is different, and that adds an element of surprise and suspense that you really can't get anywhere else, because every single opponent will bring a new challenge. However, this also means that these games tend to be a bit of a money sink, because you have to keep purchasing boosters until you find the cards that you want to build the deck of your dreams. Magic: The Gathering really takes advantage of its addictive nature, and that's part of the reason it's managed to stay around for so long, and why it's just as popular today as it was when it was first released. In the game, you take on the role of a planeswalker, a powerful wizard who can summon creatures and monsters at will to fight against his opponents. Each one of the cards in your deck represents these monsters that you're summoning, and you fight your enemy until you knock their health down to 0. It's a relatively simple concept until you start introducing more complex cards that change the rules of the game entirely. But Magic has been so successful because of its combination of simplistic concepts and complex adaptations to those concepts. Magic has one of the largest communities for any game in the world, and therefore it's really easy to get started. All you have to do is buy a few boosters or a starter deck, find some friends who play the game, or join a tournament and just get to know some new people. It's a great way to socialize and a great way to get involved with the tabletop community. The next game I'm going to bring up is one that's a bit more difficult to categorize. It doesn't really use any mechanics that you'll find anywhere else in gaming, but it is unique and it does bring a lot of new players to the table. It's one that really helps introduce people to the world of tabletop gaming, and so even though I'm not a huge fan of the game myself, I do think it's worthy noting. It's a game from Steve Jackson that you might know as Munchkin, or in this case, Munchkin Cthulhu. What I will say is great about Munchkin is its use of terminology that people will be familiar with if they've ever played a role-playing game. The idea is simple enough. You play as a hero who hopes to get to level 10 before anyone else at the table. This means you have to work both cooperatively and competitively. During your turn, you kick down a metaphorical dungeon door, and what lies inside depends on what happens next. You might find a monster, and if you find that monster, you have to be able to defeat him by having a level that's above his. This can be accomplished by adding equipment to your character or by asking for help from local friends. If you somehow manage to defeat the monster, you get to collect a certain number of treasures, and you can barter these with your teammates to get them to assist you with the fight. Treasures will give you new equipment and abilities to help you win the game. If for some reason you cannot defeat the beast, then your level is reduced, and if you get reduced to 0, you die and you have to start all over again with no equipment. You might also kick down the door to find something a bit more benign, like a curse, or even a boon that can help push you further along towards victory. Ultimately, Munchkin is a cutthroat game, where you'll offer your assistance to friends during certain moments, and then stab them in the back in the next. This can be really fun for a while, and the game's tongue-in-cheek humor is a great way to get non-gamers to your table, and to get them to accept the sort of betrayal nature of this game. However, I find that Munchkin runs a little bit long for my taste, especially with how repetitive it can get towards the end. Once someone hits level 9 and you know they're about to get to level 10, everyone is out to screw them, and that makes it feel like it's a bit uneven at times, and it can feel like it's impossible to win. Still, it's impossible to deny the impact that Munchkin has had on the gaming scene. It really is one of the most popular and successful franchises out there, and it's brought so many new people into the hobby. There are expansions ranging from superheroes to Axe Cop to Adventure Time to just the plain old original, and you really can find any flavor that you'd like to engage at your table. So, if you think it's something your group would enjoy, check out Munchkin. Card drafting is a mechanic that's really come into its own over the last few years, but it really started in board games as just another addition to the many mechanics in something like Ticket to Ride. The concept of card drafting isn't hard to get your head around if you're familiar at all with a football draft. Basically, the player is given the option to choose from a number of face-up cards, so they know what strategy they're going for when they choose it. Once that card has been taken off the board, it is replaced with a new card, which might be better in the long run. In Ticket to Ride, we see this in the face-up auction areas where players can physically choose their colored locomotives. Card drafting is as much about your long-term strategy as it is about the luck of the draw, and that's what makes these kind of games so interesting. But it's only been within recent years that this mechanic has been given games devoted entirely to it. The most famous of these games is probably 7 Wonders, in which you play as a great civilization who is trying to build a great objects like the pyramids or the Colossus of Rhodes. 7 Wonders takes place over the course of 3 distinct ages, and during each age, the players are given a hand of 7 cards. You use these cards to collect resources, to build buildings for your civilization, and to help meet the prerequisites that you need to build the large object that is your goal. But once you've selected a card from the hand, you deliver the remainder to your opponent sitting next to you to the left. A new hand every turn means a new set of resources to choose from, but that also means it can be difficult to create any form of long-term strategy. But you really have to if you want to be successful in this game, because otherwise you won't meet those prerequisites you need. What's great about Seven Wonders is the fact that it has immense tactical depth, but it also plays in just under 30 minutes. You can zoom through a game really quickly once you understand the rules. The unfortunate part is it can take a long time to learn those rules. It's a very complex game at its core, and until you really understand it, it will take you a while to get through the experience. As far as I'm concerned, Seven Wonders is the game that best uses the card drafting technique so far, but there are many games who are starting to see why this is such a compelling mechanic, and I'm sure you'll see a lot of it on the horizon. Definitely check out Seven Wonders, and definitely see if card drafting is a mechanic that you'll love as much as I do. Deck building is another component of modern game design that's really taken over in the last few years, compelling titans of industry like Marvel and DC to create their own deck building games. However, this idea is a bit more complex than card drafting. Instead of having instant access to certain cards, players start with an incredibly small hand that they can use to purchase cards that are already on the table. Once they've purchased a card, it goes back into their deck, and every turn they reshuffle their cards and redraw. Slowly, their deck becomes something more to contend with, as more expensive cards and thus better cards make their way in and make it easier for them to find a way towards victory. To understand all this, it really helps to see a deck building game come to life at a table. But unfortunately, I don't have that opportunity for you right now. So all I can do is offer you the best of the bunch, and it's a game that many people have called one of the best games of its generation. It's called Dominion. Like Seven Wonders, Dominion is a fast-paced game about building a kingdom. Each player starts off with a few bronze coins and an even fewer amount of victory cards. Victory cards are tallied up at the end of the game to determine who wins, but otherwise they're virtually worthless. They have really no gameplay benefits. Players can then use their copper to buy higher valued cards like silver or gold, which allows them to hoard money and have a lot to spend on in their deck. They can also purchase action cards, which allow them to attack their opponents or to bolster their own benefits. With each passing turn, the player discards their entire hand, shuffles their deck, and pulls out 5 new cards, meaning that every time you purchase something better, there's a chance that it could come up in your hand. Once the player has amassed enough wealth, he can start to purchase more victory cards. But the problem with victory cards, again, is that they have no gameplay value. And so they can start to clutter up your deck with a bunch of things that really give you nothing in return. As such, Dominion becomes a game about timing. It's when do you decide to purchase an action card, when do you need to get more money, and when is the moment to pick that victory card so that it won't inhibit you later on in the game. This is a very simplistic definition of Dominion's gameplay. It's an incredibly complex game that takes a while to get into, but what's really great about it is that there are so many different varieties in the action cards, and you only get to choose 10 of them per game, that you can really play this endlessly with lots of different styles. If you're someone who prefers an aggressive game, you can put tons of aggressive action cards on the table. If you like something a bit more passive, a bit more peaceful, you can do that as well. It also plays in under 30 minutes, and it's so fast-paced, you'll often find yourself surprised that it's already your turn again, because players just slap cards down incredibly fast. Dominion is a game that I like. I don't love it as much as some other people do, but at the same time I understand its appeal. It's fast-paced, it's tactical, there's a real delicate luck element to it, and it's infinitely replayable with all of these different action cards, and that makes it a real essential part of anyone's collection. Even if you don't like it personally, there are going to be people at your table who love it, and I guarantee that even if you're not a huge fan, you're going to have fun every single time you play this game. It really helps to create the deck building craze, and for that, you have to give it a lot of credit. Well folks, that's it for this week's episode of Hit the Table, and we really hope we were able to bring to light some of the better card games that are out there right now, because there's so much to play, and we think that you will really have fun with some of these at your table with your friends. We're coming to the end of our Beginner's Guide series, and we're hoping that within the next few weeks, we'll be able to start recording some of our own live gameplay sessions, and you'll be able to see us play some of these games, and really get to understand why we love them so much, and hopefully be entertained by our colorful personalities. That being said, you can always check us out at jetpackjoust.com or on any number of social networking sites, from Twitter to Facebook. As long as you look up Jetpack Joust, I'm sure you'll find us. We also hope you'll like this video if it was informative, if it helped you figure out games that you might want to purchase in the future, or if you just like hearing about all the different games that we like to talk about. Of course, you can also subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of great Let's Plays, reviews, you've got Can I Kick It, and of course you've got Hit the Table, and you'll be updated every single time we release a new one. We've got 2 questions of the week for you this time around. First, what is your favorite card game to play? What is your personal favorite? It can be Magic, it can be poker. We don't care what it is. It can be Pokemon for all we care, but we want to know what your favorite is and why. Second, and this is a little bit more important, we want to know if we were to do a live play of a role-playing game, what would you like to see the most? My preferences would be Numenera, Star Wars Edge of the Empire, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, whatever you find most interesting, but you can of course select any number of the different role-playing games that are out there, because we'll play anything. We really hope you'll take the time to answer these questions in the comment section down below, because we love hearing what you have to say, we love communicating with you, and we're really hoping to improve our channel with these kinds of questions. And of course, we hope you'll join us on the next episode of Hit the Table, where we'll be talking about miniature war games. It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure you come back. Until then, a Bill Murray.